Good morning, I'm Frank Hayworth and I'm the ECML consultant to the LINK project. Wolfgang's asked me to help the workshop by giving a short introduction to the idea of quality as an introduction to your session on this topic, because it's obviously one of the central concepts of the project. First of all, what do we mean by quality? By itself, it's a fairly vague concept. It comes from the Latin word qualis, which means what kind of thing is it? And until you can link it to a number of principles or to something operational like quality management or quality assurance, it doesn't really mean very much. So in my talk, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to some of the concepts which can be linked to quality, and to see how this can be relevant to corporate institutions, and then to perhaps suggest some of the questions which you'd like to discuss when you produce the work on quality in the project. I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation which perhaps will help you to follow the talk, and I hope we can manage to show this video and the PowerPoint at the same time. Right. So, first question is, what actually do we mean by quality? It's initially neutral and descriptive, and it's in the past it really was not a word which was linked with good. If you look at Shakespeare and you ask in Hamlet somebody what is his quality, he wanted to know whether he was an aristocrat or an ordinary person or a soldier. It was something to do which described him. When the idea of quality management started to be introduced in industry, the first one was related to producing things which were well made. It was very important during the Second World War. One of the classic things of describing quality is, what do you mean by quality in a parachute? And clearly the most important one is that the parachute should open successfully, and one of the attempts at producing quality was to make parachutes which opened the first time every time. Right? In order to do this, there was a process concept of management, and this was one of the first ways of looking at it. The idea that in order to produce things without faults, you needed to have a three-step process, one concerned with the design, where you need to specify exactly what was going to be done in a particular process. The second one was how you should implement this, so that all the methods and the approaches to do it. And thirdly, to judge the outcomes, so that you actually had a way of inspecting. Those of you who are language teachers will be able to see quite clearly that this is something which can be applied to language teaching, that you have curriculum and syllabus design, you have the methodology of teaching, and then you have an assessment of the results. So one of the principles which you can apply to quality is the concept of process management. A second concept is related to clients and customers and satisfaction. When quality assurance was implemented in service industries, clearly you were not looking so much as at the process of production as at the way in the effect it had in the relationship with clients, so that you got slogans like quality is when the client is fully satisfied, or quality is when client expectations are exceeded. There are a number of ways of looking at this, but the idea is that quality is related to the way in which an organisation interacts with the people who are involved in it, with the stakeholders, with the clients. And this was extended to think of not just clients who are buying a service, but the idea that in all activities you have a sort of interplay between the people who are providing a service and the people who are receiving the service, so that everybody is at the same time a client and a provider, and the interior. So you talk about internal and external clients. You talk about the final client and the intermediate client. There are a number of concepts which are there, but all concerned with saying that one of the elements of quality is to produce satisfaction or pleasure as a result of it. A third concept is related to results. One of the ways in which schools have been judged is on examination results, to say that, if you look at the quality of something which is produced, that 100%, one of the concepts is zero defect, of the people should do it, so that you can look at quality as being part of a way of judging what the outcomes and the results of a particular process have been. A fourth one is related much more towards values, that if you think of the work of the European Centre for Modern Languages and the Council of Europe, that the quality criteria which relate to language teaching are related to: is it inclusive? Does it produce plurilingualism? Can plurilingualism be part of mobility, part of integration in society, so that one is looking at the values and comparing what you do in relation to doing this. This is linked to another concept which is quite often used in universities, which is quality is the purpose for which you're doing a suitable one. So you talk of the concept of fitness of purpose. And then once you've decided what the right purpose is, that you're doing the right kind of thing, is it something which is fit for its purpose? This is sometimes linked with another slogan which says, do the right things, that is, have the right kind of purpose, or do things right in the way in which you do, and make sure that it actually contributes to achieving the purpose. All of these concepts are useful, but it's in a way it's a bit unsatisfactory to have an idea of quality which can be a number of 4 or 5 or 6, 7 different things, and to some extent you can find problems with all of these. The problem of process can tend to be top down and not to reflect the complexity of human relations. That processes tend to be looked at in a linear way, and this doesn't necessarily correspond to how people work in companies or how education takes place. The idea of client satisfaction is a difficult one as well. In a way, any educational process has long-term results, which is not necessarily identifiable as people being immediately happy and having immediate satisfaction. So although it's a useful concept, it doesn't go through. The one about results, there are all sorts of problems linked with the idea that educational success should be entirely on examination results. There are whole sorts of other things that are there. The values and fitness for purpose concept is a very useful one, but it's not particularly operational. It doesn't immediately indicate to you what you can be able to do in order to put it into practice. That's led me to think that one of the ways which we should look at quality is to look at quality in terms of 2 concepts, one of which is achieving trust, so that you get trust between the stakeholders, between the learners and the users of language, between the various elements of the corporation. But obviously trust cannot be something which can be taken for granted without doing something, and therefore you need to think about the idea of trust being legitimate. And one of the contributions which the Council of Europe's work has made towards language learning is the idea that things like the Common European Framework of Reference, the various descriptors, the language portfolios, these are resources which can be used to implement trust. So in order to think about quality, when you come to look at it in the products of the LINK project, you need to think, which are the different models are we going to apply in which particular context. It doesn't mean you're going to look at a single one, but there are different aspects which you probably need to look at when you're giving guidance. And I think in terms of what the LINK project is designed to do, we have to look at it in 2 ways. The The first way is related to the idea that quality in corporate life is enhanced if you have a proper strategy for the use of languages and plurilingualism in corporate life. Perhaps I could do a parenthesis here to say that one needs to make a distinction between criteria for quality, where you think that integration, inclusiveness, efficiency would be criteria for what might well happen in a corporate language strategy, and standards, things which are operational, specific things which can be measured, which would say, for example, a standard would be that we take account of the languages which are present in the corporation and make sure that we exploit them and use them in the most efficient way possible. So you have a distinction between criteria and standards. But if we look at quality or strategy for language use as being an element of quality in corporate life, we need to think about what the justifications are. There are clearly justifications linked to the efficiency and success of the company, that the more a company can offer a range of languages to deal with its customers and to acknowledge what they are doing, the more efficient it's likely to be. But it's equally true that companies and organizations are microcosms of society, and that they're concerned with integration, with people being able to contribute fully, to feel at home and at ease in what they're doing, and therefore having a strategy for recognizing the languages and giving benefit to the use of the languages of all the people who work in an organization is one of the ways in which a company can be seen as filling its ethical responsibilities. The second part of quality is clearly what kind of guidance can you give to companies in order to achieve this. And here you might well want to look at both processes, to look at resources, to look at who the different stakeholders are, how you can create a language strategy which makes sense and which is feasible and possible to put into practice. In order to do this, you need to think of, first of all, what are the resources which the Council of Europe or language expertise in general can produce for companies. Clearly the European language portfolio is a very important tool, and it might be interesting to see in ways in which you could give guidance to companies on how to use it. You will also probably want to look at guidance for human resources and training managers to see how best they can implement language training, what criteria they can use, what processes, what ways they would like to have to evaluate it. You'd clearly also want to have a look at the ways in which corporate language strategy can be evaluated. Doing the techniques for dealing with language audits in a company, the techniques you can use to set targets for training, or to choose people for jobs, or to choose people for particular missions. So in your project, I can see your workshop activities being on the following level. First of all, what do we mean by a language strategy as an element of quality in a company? What are the criteria for doing that? What are the standards which can be used for doing it? Secondly, what guidance can we give for efficient use of languages in a company in terms of setting targets, setting levels, selecting people for jobs, organising language training, giving opportunities for doing this in a fairly informal way, ways in which you can motivate learners, people who are working to want to learn languages, and how we can create an environment where languages and use of languages is open, convivial, and contributes to the harmony and the communication in the company. And finally, it'd be important to look at the resources which can be given, how people can be made familiar with the different approaches to evaluation which are available, to the way in which Council of Europe resources and Council of Europe criterion policies can be made to be effective. So I'd like to wish you a most enjoyable workshop in Graz, and I look forward to seeing the eventual product and results of your discussions. Right, thank you. Bye.